Imagine that you meet a talking skeleton, whose voice resembled a pretty woman, and instead of doing anything harmful, she gets down to her knee and proposes to you, telling you that you are one person she looked for all her life. Arwen, get proposed by one skeleton and something truly unexpected and beautiful takes place. The story begins with a loud thunderous sound of lightning shaking everything in the view, and we see a tall and huge castle on top of a mountain. Our protagonist, who was reflecting to himself about the castle and pondering how the exterior and beauty from the inside both matter a lot, the stair led him to a room where a large threatening-looking casket was laying. We finally get to see our protagonist, Arwen, who is seen absolutely stunned as his eyes widen to see and hear something that never in his life he imagined. A skeleton with a bright and cheerful voice asked him to become her lover, as this fateful encounter is to change everything in his life. A pleasant tale begins. Arwen is an adventurer, and his life is simple. He hunts down monsters and gets paid. This time, he was given a task to clear a few monsters in an old castle. There were sightings of monsters inside the castle walls, and his task was to exterminate them without harming the castle itself. However, as he made his way to one of the rooms, the coffin in front of the throne caught his attention, and just as curiosity killed the cat, Arwen slid open the door and woke a weird skeleton from inside, and we get to the present, where the skeleton clenches its fist, and she tells him that this is the time for them to be united in everlasting long love. As Arwen sits down and smacks his head, realizing that he is caught up in something very strange, he sums up the things. The skeleton introduced herself to be Luria Ol Sinariel, and she used to be the princess of this old castle a long time ago, precisely 100 years ago, as she exclaimed. She added that she encountered an evil and powerful wizard in the past, who ravaged the entire place and turned her into a skeleton and spent a century sealed inside the coffin, in a slumber that Arwen just broke without knowing anything. As he reflects that since his childhood he has been unlucky, now he has to deal with something worse. And with a troubled tone, she concludes that the only way the curse that is placed on her is to be lifted is through a kiss from someone who loves her from the bottom of his heart. As she said this in a jumpy manner and happy expression, Arwen was not impressed. And in her imagination phase, where she lets her imagination go wild of him and both her and him were kissing passionately, and had a happy ending where both of them had to spend the rest of their precious days together, she adds that once Arwen will get to see her previous figure, he would die to be with her. And Arwen added that her old body would be 100 years old and nothing but rotten flesh and smell would be there. She interrupts and tells him that this is a pure story of fairy tale every child in the kingdom listens to when they go to sleep. And as she leans toward him and with a determined expression and voice tells Arwen to love me, and just love me, Arwen goes into shock mode and pushes himself back, exclaiming that there is no way he is falling in love with a pair of bones. He denied her, and she tells him that in the end he is like everyone else who goes only for looks. In the end, appearance is the only thing that matters in love for you, she adds. And Arwen yells, in your case, that's important. Their cute convo goes on, and she tells him that heart is what counts more, and further convinces him that she has a wonderful personality that everyone in the castle knew her for. As always, he was not impressed and asked her what is the thing that is the most appealing in her, and with a bold tone and pose, she lets him know that she once was the richest. Yelling, Arwen adds that talk about money is the least thing you should boast about when talking about personality. And with a finger point, she lets him know that she was once called the most beautiful person ever made by God, and the entire kingdom always talked about her. In disbelief, Arwen tells her that it doesn't change the fact that she has a weird personality. And she nails the coffin by telling him that if Arwen were to make her his lover, and the curse is lifted, he would have the most beautiful person right next to him with all the riches imaginable. Arwen interrupted her bold statement and confident tone by letting her know that all of that doesn't change the fact that she's a spoiled princess with a high and mighty attitude, which doesn't work for him. Finally breaking her character, she cries and starts to beg him to love her just once, constantly telling him that even if it is for 1 week, she would do anything. As Arwen questions why 1 week, while clenching her hands she tells him that after 1 week of her being outside of the coffin, her curse will end up becoming permanent and unliftable. With a trembling voice, she adds that she will turn into a real monster for real. Unable to keep up with her pace, she was desperate as she begs him, and weeps that she would not want herself to start attacking normal people if she were to lose consciousness. Please, just fall in love with me, as the high and mighty person she tried to portray earlier went away in an instant. She showed a genuine concern, and her request touched Arwen's heart. He grunts at first and mutters that this is going to turn him down a lot, but while scratching his head, he tells her, "All right, I could try," adding that he doesn't guarantee him falling for her, and she would have no option if she were to fail. A unique and rather strange daily life of Arwen begins as he finally is going to live with the skeleton that he just met. She held his hand and looked straight into his eyes, and Arwen braced himself for the things that were to come now. Luria smiled at Arwen while holding 2 cooking utensils and telling him now that she will be starting her operation with firstly preparing a hot and delicious dinner for him. As Arwen sat there wondering to himself that he thought something else would take place, he stares at the fancy and elegant plate she carefully placed right in front of him, filled with unique cuisine that never in his life he had seen. And the fresh scent of the food moved him, as he muttered to himself that a food prepared by a skeleton. Luria tells him to enjoy and savor every bit. Fearing that it could be poisoned or disgusting, he decides to taste, and a burst of flavor pops inside his mouth, and he praises Luria, telling her that it is so good. Hearing this, she adds that she practiced a lot to master cooking and be good enough to handle laundry. And while joyfully moving, she leans up to him and asks if her girlfriend points had moved up. As he is totally blown away by the taste, he tells her that his mind about her has changed a bit, and praised her food and cooking. He seemed to like the soup more than anything else, and she breaks the ice by telling him that the soup was made from the broth of her bone. Hearing this, he imagines and spits out the soup in his mouth. Playfully, she teases him, and their wholesome interaction goes on. The next day, he slowly opens his eyes after having a sound sleep with his belly full of food, and he notices that Luria was sticking very close to him, touching him, and had his right arm under her legs. As she greets him with a lovely voice and asks if sleeping with her was good or not, he rejects her remarks and tells her that sleeping with a skeleton is really not his fetish and isn't thrilling at all. Obsessed with making him fall in love, she asks if she had gained any girlfriend points, and he tells her 0. She exclaims that she even had to rub her breasts against him, and he replies, "Luria, you never had them in the first place." As he got up and brushed his teeth, she tells him in an angry tone that relationships are hard, and she tries to impress him by offering her lap as his pillow. He replies that it sounds hard. Luria spins around and asks Arwen which romantic activity he would like to do. And while both of them always wonder what to do, they started doing normal activities, reading and studying old literature, talking to each other over the fresh breeze, cleaning, and playing together. It seemed like he had become used to being around her little by little. One night, as he was roaming around the castle, he stumbled across a diary. It seemed like it was important, since inside, someone mentioned an illness of his daughter. It read that his daughter's health was not improving, and dozens of doctors gave up on her treatment. He wrote further that no matter how much gold and silver it would take, he had to protect his daughter. "I must hurry," he wrote, "since she has very little time remaining and is hanging on a thin thread which balances her life." It seemed that in the end, they met a wizard who promised them a full cure for their daughter. He seemed sketchy, and the father himself hesitated at first. But now he was without any option. As Arwen continued to read, he heard something from the back, and his attention drew toward it. He glanced to see nothing and muttered to himself that he had been feeling strange. To verify and make sure that there were no monsters or threats, he decided to make his way deeper into the castle. He checked and found no one and nothing but ragged books and tables with mold on them. Figuring it out, he concluded that it must have been his imagination running wild for some time. While going to close the door, reminding himself that he needed to take a bath, there, it seemed, his hunch about something being present was in fact not wrong, as some mysterious skeleton sat there. On the other side, Luria let out an embarrassed loud scream as she covered her front, yelling, "You adventurer! I didn't know you were a pervert!" Arwen was absolutely pissed, and thought that there is nothing he can enjoy even if he wants to. She continued with her helpless cries, telling him that he planned all this just to sneak up on her and see her bathing. Interrupting her, he asked if she planned this all and playfully kept the light on. Their real skid busted, and she asked him if his heart skipped a beat. He realized that nothing in his entire body flinched or moved. As she exclaimed that she was naked, he yelled back, "You really call that being naked?" Later, she approached him and offered to wash his back, as this is what lovers would do. As she started to struggle and scrub him, he added that men would love it if it was a beautiful girl. He thought to himself about the strange activity he detected earlier, and figured that it would be good to let her know as well. Maybe she knew something about it. And as he was about to say it, he retraced his words and decided to keep it a secret for now. As she persisted in asking him, he refused, despite Luria telling him that it made her worry. He changed the topic, and their conversation moved on. Luria then told Arwen that she seemed to notice a big problem. As he asked what it was, she told him that even though they're a couple, they still haven't named each other properly. Arwen reflected on that to himself as well and agreed. She proposed that wouldn't it only be proper to call each other by their first names and mark each other? She said this while ending her sentence with his name, Arwen. His eyes widened, and without any pause, he spun around and replied, "You are right." He called her by her first name, and as she heard Luria coming out of his mouth, she froze. Embarrassed, Arwen shook her and told her to say something, as it was very difficult for him to say that. She blushed through every bony cheek and couldn't contain her excitement and joy, telling him that it just felt so normal and good, it made her feel like a little girl. As he let out a big sigh remembering that she is rather super cheerful, he reminded her that she needs to wipe his body now. She replied loudly, "I will start to shampoo your hair as well, my love." After the bath, they got together ready to sleep, and while letting out a big heavy breath, Lurai shares that she turned the pillow to a yes and no pillow. That means they can cross lines today. As with flushed expression, was slightly covered by the pillow, she adds that we can start now, and Arwen laid there completely ignoring her and tells her that it is physically impossible. With her heart broken, she mocks him and tells him that for refusing to sleep with the most beautiful girl in the entire kingdom, his standards were too high, and Arwen yells that you don't even have a face in the first place. As he shook her off, he notices something again, and this time, every instinct in his body reminded him that this sensation was the same that he felt earlier. As he gets up, alerting even Lurai, he found it strange and quickly started to prepare, and this time checked more thoroughly, going from inch to inch. He asks Lurai if she was the only one in the castle all this time, and she replies that that should be correct, and Arwen takes a lantern and makes his way to the same room he checked earlier, and Lurai followed him as well. Arwen, with a curious tone, mentioned that it could be the evil wizard who had turned her into the skeleton. Could it be that he revived himself and haunts this area? And she replies with a serious tone that it is impossible, as she killed him off a while ago and made sure to eradicate him properly. Surprised to hear this, he goes near the library where he kept sensing something, and Lurai herself mentioned that there is something here indeed. As he twisted the lock of the door, he opened to see two tall skeletons, one wearing a high-end luxury robe with a crown on the top of his head and a rusty sword in his hand, the other wearing a ragged well-made dress and made struggle to maintain still while growling. As Arwen readied himself, immediately Lurai exclaimed that it is not possible and yelled father and mother. As she was too happy to be still, she rushed to them while opening her bony arms, crying that I am so glad to see you again. The king's skeleton slashes her hard in the spine, straightening it, and she slams to the ground while trembling. Arwen questions her action and she reminds him that those are her parents, and she gets up telling him that her parents were killed by the evil wizard long time ago, but it seems that they were under his spell as well, and even after their death they seem to be moving against their will. She reflects that after the attack she searched everywhere for them, but it seemed that the wizard hid their bodies in the storage room. Arwen understood the plan of the wizard and breaks the ice, telling her that the wizard planned to control both of them after killing you, and she replies that it was his plan, but I killed him before that. As she cheerfully looks at her mother's skeleton, she adds that everyone told her that she looked just like her mother, as she even got the beautiful golden hair from her, and Arwen reminded her that neither of you have any hair to compare. She grabs Arwen and with a gentle and loud voice tells her parents that this is my lover and I really wanted to introduce him to you guys. As she said this, the king and the queen remained the same, showing no emotion, unlike her. And as he questioned her action, she tells him with a weak voice that they were her parents, and meeting them is important. Could you please say something to make them like you for my sake? And while making a troublesome expression at first, he followed through and gently introduced himself to her parents, telling them that I am an adventurer and bounty hunter, Arwen, and I am in a relationship with Lurai, with intention of becoming proper lovers. Just as he said this, the king became furious, as it seemed like they understood, and Lurai added that her father was pretty emotional. The king launched a wide swing at him, and Arwen dodges, questioning why is he attacking immediately after the introduction. And the attack kept getting more aggressive. As Arwen blocks one of the strong swings, playfully Lurai tells Arwen that every father turns into a monster when their daughter introduces their partner. And he held the stances. The king muttered something, and as he carefully listened, the king told Arwen that won't forgive you, necromancer, coming to my castle and my daughter. As Arwen remembered the necromancer Lurai mentioned earlier, he pushes him back and with a chilling expression and tone, he mutters that I won't forgive you and I will kill you. It was obvious that her parents were already monsters. Lurai approaches them and asks Arwen if he can handle this, and with a sad voice tells him to help her slay down her parents. As she grabbed a mace from behind, she stood right in front. Arwen asks her if she is okay with this request, and the skeletons standing there were her parents who fed her. And while trembling she tells him that it is all right. I have already seen them die in front of my eyes, and both of them passed away and dead must never return. As her voice kept cracking, she tells him that before they turn into complete monsters, she wanted to bury her parents with her own hands. Without adding anything, Arwen himself starts to look at them as skeletons and readied himself and tells her that if she says so, let's do it. Her father charges himself at Arwen with speed and a loud scream. With a single spell from the mace of Lurai, a 12-meter tall thick and strong ice covered both of her parents immediately, immobilizing them. As Arwen is surprised, he praises his partner and swings strongly to end their misery once and for all. As they got hit, they cared for nothing else and muttered their daughter's name with pain and worry. As Arwen glanced at Lurai, who was very quiet, she grabs both her parents' heads and remembered their kind and warm face one last time and how they would always smile at her with love. She kneels down and wishes her parents to rest in peace now. As Arwen paid his respect as well, after that both of them traveled to the royal tomb nearby where noble men and women were buried during the slaughter that the evil wizard caused. This journey took around a whole day, and there, both of them buried them properly and paid respect. As he cracked a joke, he said that it was very strange to see a skeleton praying at a grave, and her mood brightened up, and she reflects that she has never been so glad and was so happy to bring her parents there. She added that their bodies were inside the castle all this time, and they must have been lonely, crying and wanting to rest so bad. And Arwen tells her that this place is truly beautiful, and you can get to see the vast ocean horizon and the blue wave refreshing the air. He comforts her by telling that her parents would surely rest in peace. She agrees and glances back and tells Arwen that it is true, they must have been very tired. Arwen tells Lurai that all the time he has been with her, he realizes that she is a good person. She was surprised and asks what was going on with him all of a sudden, and he blushes slightly while facing the other side. And their beautiful conversation begins, as both felt comfortable with each other and cracked jokes. Lurai leans closer to him and asks if he thinks of her as a good person. He looks down and tells her that the week has drew to an end. As he remembers all the time he spent, she reflects as well, tells him that time flew by in an instant. And how was a skeleton lover been for you? Were you able to find love for me? She asks, and he refuses to answer. And while complaining about his half-hearted answer, Arwen tells her that what I felt during this week is that the physical appearance matters a lot. And the time I spent with you was more like a close-arranged marriage or something, and I don't really know about love. As she yells that it is always the same with you men. She leans again and tells him that they will find out if he was able to fall for her or not when she kisses him, and he asks if she would remain the same, if there is no love between them. Without really answering, she tells him that there is no harm, they just need to kiss for a bit to find out. As her face was closer to his and the whole demeanor of Arwen changed, he told her to stop and not yet. He tells her that before they kiss, there is something they need to talk about, her secret that she has been hiding and lying to him about. There, both of them stared at each other with serious expressions, and with a trembling and weak voice, she breaks the ice, telling him that now that it's troublesome, he was able to catch up to her. Fearing something, he asks her whether she would turn back to a human if the curse is lifted, but that does not seem to be the case, as once the curse is lifted, she would perish and die. As he says this, she stares at him, and Arwen adds that the diary he read, which was left in the library, was about a sick little girl, and that was her, he asks. He continues by telling her that her father mentioned the evil wizard to be a necromancer, and reveals that the spell of the evil wizard was not placed on her before she died. Rather, it was done after she passed away. And she replies, "When I was alive, my body was weak, but the magical power inside me was so strong that it kept me going. That evil wizard was after me. When my father invited him over to cure me of my ill body, he pretended to conjure a curing spell, but he put on a spell that killed me and hoped to turn me into his servant. As he continued his conquest, he summoned countless undead and ravaged the country, killing everything in his way, and chaos and death was all that remained. When I woke up, I was able to find an opportunity, and I used that to kill him, but I was too late." As he praised her for killing a wizard, which is an impossible task, she replies that she always had talent for magic and the wizard was not able to fully control her. As she said this, she begged him again to love her, so she can rest in peace and meet her parents. As she stated her selfish request to him, he asked why she lied to him in the first place, and she apologized, telling him that it is true that she would turn into a monster in 1 week, and the thought of her harming countless innocent people would make the wizard's plan a success. As she continues with a sad voice, she tells him that "Love me please, if you succeed I will vanish" was something that she could never say to him. This way, he would have never been with her in the first place, and that is why she had to lie and hide the truth. She ends by saying that it would be easier to find someone to help her, and there would have been a higher chance for this plan to work. As he reflected to himself, all he heard was her sad and lonely apology. As she lowered her head, begging for his pardon, he adds that he wants to be angry at her, but he just can't seem to be. Hearing this, she froze, and with a troubled expression, he asks her if there is any other way to turn her back to normal, or for her to remain a skeleton without turning into a monster. As he pondered and asked and kept asking, while holding her hands together, she tells him that the dead must rest. As she said this, Arwen became silent and emotional. As the breeze refreshed the atmosphere, Lurai called out to his name, telling him to stop crying and weeping. And he wept as tears overflowed from his eyes without stopping. He wipes his eyes and grabs her, telling her that it is not fair that, as a skeleton, she can't shed tears of her own, but tells her that her heart is more beautiful than ever. As he embraced her, her body emitted warm and bright light, and she lets him know her final words. Telling him that ever since she was born, all her life she struggled to move properly because of her illness, but the time she spent with Arwen was the most fun she ever had. As her real body appeared and long golden hair glowed brighter, her body became normal, and she held her hands together, telling him that this curse can only be lifted through a kiss of someone who truly loves you. And with a cheerful voice, she smiled and told him, "Thank you for loving me until the very end, Arwen." As she said this, her real body came to view, as all her boasting was real. She, in fact, was the most beautiful girl in the entire kingdom. And both of them cried while smiling at each other, reflecting on all the time they spent together, and how each moment was a blessing in disguise. And with time, she perished into air, leaving Arwen there, waiting for his lover. And as he laid down, realizing that he was in fact in love, he concludes that in love, all that matters is the heart, and nothing else.